It's Super Bowl week here in Phoenix, and while the Bengals nor the Browns are playing in the big game this season, the festivities have sure been electric. Welcome, everyone, to Buckeye Sports Breakdown. I'm Mahir Hassan. Thanks for tuning in. If you follow me on the socials and you've seen it a lot this week, you know that I've been out and about going to all of these different events this week pertaining to the Super Bowl. I'll give you an insight later on about what it's like living in a host city during this week. And not only is the Super Bowl going on here in Phoenix, but the Waste Management Open as well. And then in a couple weeks, spring training will be going on. Plus, you may know two brothers who played their high school and college ball in Ohio will be squaring off against each other in the Super Bowl. You may know who they are. But first, there were a lot of former players who played for Ohio teams that either announced retirement, achieved some awards, especially with the NFL honors yesterday, and even one broke a record that stood for about 40 years in the NBA. Let's start off with a retirement first with AJ Green. And again, for a lot of folks, including my generation, who, when they started getting into the Bengals culture and being a Bengals fan, Andy Dalton and AJ Green, those were the two guys. And they were starting their career in Cincinnati at the same time. And AJ Green, much similar to how Jamar Chase is playing right now, kind of struck money with the Bengals. Fourth overall pick out of Georgia. And boy, did he show his talent over the years there in Cincinnati. Taking a look at the stats, of course, he dealt with injuries throughout his time in Cincinnati and throughout his career in general. In 2019, missed the entire season, missed almost half of the season in 2018 and part of it in 2014 and 2016. But nonetheless, when you look at how AJ Green played overall, especially after the Bengals let go of Ocho Cinco. Please, yeah, remember that. The Bengals let go of Ocho Cinco that offseason, along with Carson Palmer. And you bring in Andy Dalton and AJ Green. So again, the quarterback and receiver changes almost like for like in that ways. When you look at how Green has played, I mean, he was kind of just an addition to Ocho Cinco and then some, when it came to playing in the slot, when it came to playing deep, he was the guy overall. Simply put, in today's terminology, he was him. And he sure was today. And he did say in a few interviews that he's back to being a Bengals fan. He and his wife are very happy with that ideal. And hey, Bengals are doing pretty well. The odds for next year's Super Bowl came out today, and the Bengals are tied for third. So much better than last year, where they were around plus 2,000. They go into next year with plus 900. Bills and Chiefs are your top two teams. And the Bengals are currently tied with the Eagles and the Niners, the two teams that were in this year's NFC Championship. Then now you look at the NFL honors. There were a lot of guys from Ohio, that is, played in the state of Ohio, who got awards. Let's start off with the recipients first, starting off with the Jets players, Garrett Wilson and Sauce Gardner. Garrett Wilson, the former Ohio State Buckeye, winning Rookie of the Year this year. And again, I'd have to say this, especially earlier on this year. I think of that week 2 game where the Jets were down 30-17, similar to a Heidi Bowl type game. Look it up if you don't know, but the Jets all of a sudden came back and won that game against the Browns. And again, Garrett Wilson, first year in the league. And you think about it, when you look at other Rookie of the Year options, a lot of good ones itself. And his former teammate, Chris Olave, who played for the Saints this year, also a viable option. Again, kind of shows how good Brian Hartline and Ohio State's receiving core has been over the past few years. Let's take a look at Wilson's stats this year. Overall, pretty good. 12 games started, 83 catches for 1,103 yards, 4 touchdowns overall, and his longest was 60 yards. Again, the Jets started off really well this year. And again, people in New York were saying maybe this is the year that the Jets break the curse and they're finally back in the playoffs. Again, it didn't work out as such, but nonetheless, the way Garrett Wilson, I think, contrary to how the Jets played this year, was consistent throughout. Another guy who's consistent throughout, Sauce Gardner, who won Defensive Rookie of the Year. Sauce said, I believe in his draft video, that Juice is only temporarily, Sauce is permanent. Sauce is forever. And I think if he's going to live up to that name, this is a good building block right here. When you look at how Sauce played this year, I think it's very similar to another Jets cornerback who got inducted into the Hall of Fame. More on the Hall of Fame class later in this episode. But the guy I'm referring to, Darrelle Revis, Sauce Island, Revis Island, I think there's a connection there. And overall, when you look at how Revis played, I think Sauce is Revis and then some in terms of just staying with his receiver, and he's unable to, let the receiver escape his grasp. And I think that's where Sauce really shows at all. I remember when the Bengals played the Jets in week 3, and I remember going into that week because I had Jamar Chase in fantasy. I said, should I sit Jamar? Again, knowing how Jamar has played the past couple of years, including this past year, it sounds like an absurd question, but not when you're facing Sauce. When he plays that tight of coverage, even when you can't get deep shots, which Jamar was known for, especially last year. This year, we didn't see that much of it as he went more intermediate in his routes. But nonetheless, Sauce Gardner, man, you think about it, it's hard to say that a rookie is the best corner in the league. Again, we've seen these rookies show up on the big stages and show up in their position. Look at Micah Parsons last year overall. But you get my point. When those guys show up, they do a great job. And I think Sauce has done it overall. This guy is going to be a treat to watch for years to come. And now we move to the other part of the NFL honors right after the Rookie of the Year awards, the Hall of Fame. You have got 2 players, one from the Bengals, one from the Browns, who are headed to the Hall of Fame. Ken Riley for the Bengals, Joe Thomas for the Browns. We'll start off with Riley first. People outside of Cincinnati don't understand the brevity and the significance of an induction like this. Despite the Bengals and how popular they've been, there's only been one Hall of Fame induction. Only one former Bengals player has gotten into the Hall of Fame, and that was Anthony Munoz. Interestingly enough, the person that informed Riley he was heading to the Hall of Fame, Anthony Munoz. Kind of poetic there for the 2 Cincinnati guys. Looking at Riley, played for the Bengals from 1969 to 1983. And again, Riley playing cornerback for the team. Shout out to Bengal Jim and some of the other Bengals super fans. They were putting a watch party during the NFL honors to see if some of the Bengals would get in. Willie Anderson was another guy in consideration. He played offensive lineman for the team in the 2000s. Unfortunately, he did not get in. But as I said, significant for this team and significant for Riley as well. I was just looking up his stats, of course, well before my time watching the Bengals. 15 seasons in the NFL, 65 interceptions, 596 return yards, 5 touchdowns, 18 fumble recoveries, 96 fumble return yards. And again, you look at his interceptions, interception return yards, and interceptions returned for touchdowns, all Bengals records. So for sure, well-deserved for Riley. Interestingly enough, of course, we like to talk about headlines. And of course, the headline year for the Bengals was in 1981 when they got the first seed, going 12-4 in the regular season, culminating in their first ever Super Bowl appearance. You look at Riley that year, he recovered a fumble and forced 5 interceptions that year, including 4 in a 3-game span while Cincinnati made a playoff run. One of those interceptions included one against the Bills, 28-21 in the AFC Championship. I don't know, actually, pardon me, that may not be the AFC Championship. That's going to be something I'll have to look at. But nonetheless, as I've said many times before on this podcast and just in general on how life works, and especially in some of the games I've done in play-by-play, big players show up in big moments. Just to clarify, that Bills-Bengals game, that was a divisional game, not the AFC Championship. AFC Championship was the Freezer Bowl between the Bengals and the San Diego Chargers there at Riverfront Stadium. So now let's move to the Browns. And again, for me, it's almost a situation of tell me you feel old without telling me you feel old. And I think for me, it's got to be Joe Thomas. Played for the Browns from 2007 to 2017. Throughout the league, he was well known for being a reliable, dependent guy. Had 10,363 consecutive snaps played. That itself, I think, says something. It doesn't matter what type of injury he had. And he had some injuries during his time playing. And oftentimes I'd tune into a Browns game and, the broadcasters would say, well, Joe Thomas is dealing with some sort of shoulder injury, but he's going to be out there. That itself, I mean, that itself to not just be a dog, but be a dog that goes through pressure. That's a lot of consideration and a lot of grace I got to give towards Joe Thomas. If I'm not mistaken, he's also slimmed down as well. So, again, making a pretty good body transformation after his time in the NFL was done. So, great work for him. Now, let's get to probably the biggest news out of Ohio this week pertaining to a man 20 years ago who was born and raised in Akron, Ohio, was drafted by the Cleveland Cavaliers out of high school, St. Vincent St. Mary's High School in that area. 2023, we are now in 2023, and a few days ago, that same man, off a fadeaway, broke Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's record for the most points in the regular season in a career. That man, folks, is LeBron James, a man that has capsulated Ohio, capsulated Cleveland, overall has put Cleveland and Ohio on the map in all. Again, I think when you look at how LeBron has played, I think it's hard to compare when LeBron was with the Heat. Of course, he was a star when he was with the Heat. Don't get me wrong. I mean, one of the reasons why I loved the NBA then, minus Dirk Nowitzki and all, I was a Mavs fan for a little time here and there, but it was LeBron James. That big three in Miami was a force to be reckoned with. You get to my point where he makes that return to Cleveland, leads the team to 4 consecutive NBA finals, including one where they win after being down 3-1 in the series, and Cleveland goes berserk. First title in 52 years. First time you have a major title in the state of Ohio since the Reds won the World Series back in 1990. So the first time in 26 years at that given point. This dude is a hero. This dude is a hero to Ohio, and he will always be remembered in Ohio history for how he supported this team, how he supported, the teams surrounding Ohio, of course, the Browns and the Ohio State Buckeyes. He's always going to be a hero. I'll tell you that. When you look at how his play has gone, again, the biggest question, and it seems like it every time we see LeBron in a final, again, it feels like Stephen A. Smith always has a big rant about it. Saw him today, actually, in Scottsdale. It was pretty chill, believe it or not. But nonetheless, LeBron always has this comparison to Jordan. Who's better, LeBron or Jordan? And I think I'm coming to the fact, and I'm accepting the fact that LeBron might be better than Jordan. Again, Jordan's got the titles, but when you look at how LeBron has played consistently in that regards, he's played with some good players, but at the same time, he's also played with guys like Russell Westbrook. And I'm not talking about Thunder Russell Westbrook. I'm talking about now Russell Westbrook, who is apparently headed to the Jazz. Again, not guys who are not in the right headspace, guys who are not putting the work in, but LeBron has certainly has. He's been consistent throughout, and I think that's where LeBron has really earned his stripes in ways, because despite Jordan, who, although he had, a lot of power in the team, although he was a one-man show, the Bulls couldn't go far until they added Pippen and Rodman. When you look at James on the other side, he's also gone the same way, but I think very similar is the fact that his points have showed overall. He's not relying on other people. The team relies around him, and the dude's been playing for a while. Again, he could be playing for money. He could be playing for passion, but either way, congratulations on reaching the record. LeBron, hope you play for a few more years. Maybe you get to play with Bronny. Of course, that's his goal in the grand scheme of things. And again, a gift to basketball and a gift to American sports. I'll take a quick break, and then I'll be back here to talk the Super Bowl, specifically Travis Kelce against Jason Kelce, and what both of those players have to do to get some good performance and help their team get a Lombardi trophy on Sunday. I will also talk about my own experiences this week with the Super Bowl right here in Phoenix. Stick around, folks. I'll be back in a quick moment. Folks, we are only 2 days away from Super Bowl 57 happening right here in Phoenix at State Farm Stadium. I'm Mihirson Hassan, and thanks for tuning in to Buckeye Sports Breakdown. For the first time in Super Bowl history, we will have two brothers facing off against each other in the big game. Travis Kelce, a tight end for the Kansas City Chiefs, and Jason Kelce, an offensive lineman for the Philadelphia Eagles, squaring at each other, both of them trying to get Lombardi number 2 in their career. Travis won with the Chiefs back at Super Bowl 54, and Jason won with the Eagles back in Super Bowl 52. And their mom, Donna Kelce, has been kind of in the news a lot this week, and she was at Super Bowl opening night as well as I was there as well. And she simply said, I'll be rooting for the offense. No matter what happens, she'll be rooting for the offense. And to be honest, I'll be rooting for the offense as well in that game. You have two high-powered teams. You got Patrick Mahomes, MVP Patrick Mahomes, I might add, with a lot of his arsenal there. Of course, this being the first year without Tyreek Hill. And then, of course, you got the Eagles, added A.J. Brown. You got another year under Jalen Hurts at quarterback and really started to use his legs a lot this year with 13 rushing touchdowns, leading the rushing touchdown category in terms of quarterbacks. So let's take a look at both Travis and Jason specifically. Again, as I noted before, both of those guys played in Ohio for high school and college football, high school in Huber Heights outside of Cleveland, and then college at UC in Cincinnati. You look at Travis, and again, he's been Patrick Mahomes' biggest help, at least his biggest asset, I might add, in terms of the receiving core. And again, I've been hearing from a lot of media personnel. Shout out here at Cronkite, especially Cronkite Sports, Olivia Eisenhower, who's been doing some work with the Super Bowl, noting that Patrick does not have a limp going into this game, at least not much. So expect a more mobile Patrick Mahomes, but at the same time, when we see Mahomes go mobile, guess who he tries to find? Travis Kelce. And I think for Kelce in general, and I've seen this a lot, this may be a bad take on my part, but I don't think Travis Kelce has had that good of a year. This is below average for him. Very rarely has he gone above triple digits. Very rarely has he had maybe at least 7, 8 catches per usual compared to how he's been the last 1-2 years in that regards. This Chiefs team has had a little bit of working to do on the offensive side, and Travis Kelce again has not played that he's been consistent, but not as high of a role as one might expect, especially with Tyreek Hill gone. But I think let's take a look at the matchup, because I think the Eagles have a lot on the defensive side. Darius Slay, Brandon Graham, you name it. They've got the playmakers there. And then you got Travis Kelce, the best tight end in the league, might go down as the best tight end in NFL history. But keep in mind, this was an Eagles defense that only allowed George Kittle 3 catches and 32 yards. So again, the 49ers did not have a quarterback. Brock Purdy nor Josh Johnson is Patrick Mahomes. That being said, at the same time, you never know what can happen in the middle of the field. So Travis Kelce, again, will be on high watch. He will have to get a few routes going. And I think if Mahomes does well, I think we might see Magician Mahomes come out in that game and try to find Kelce in those specific spots. For Jason, on the other side, especially this offensive line, one of the best offensive lines in the league. For some people, the best offensive line in the league. It continues to keep the good mojo going. A lot of people, including Mina Kimes with ESPN, was talking about the matchup for the NFC Championship, the D line for San Francisco and the O line for Philadelphia, I think the same remains. The Chiefs did pretty well against Joe Burrow and the Bengals a couple weeks ago, especially earlier on in the game when that shorthanded Bengals offensive line was just trying to settle into it as it happened. And I should preface this, but I was at Old Town Scottsdale earlier today, which is where ESPN is set up for all of their coverage. I was watching First Take live. Stephen A. Smith was talking about some different players who could make an impact. One of the guys, Chris Jones, your nose tackle, could be going up against Kelsey on a lot of situations. And again, I think that's going to be key when it comes to playing in the trenches. We know the Chiefs have a good passing defense, and they might spread it out. The Eagles themselves have A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, two great receivers, but how they've played, and again, it's going to be a little different playing in Phoenix compared to playing in Philly, but I've been really impressed with the run game with Miles Sanders, Jalen Hurts, even Kenneth Gainwell getting a few carries here and there. It doesn't matter who the Eagles have in running. That offensive line has done a great job. And specifically when I've seen them break loose, it's always been on the outside. Where are the outside zones? Where are the pitches? Where are these running backs or Hurts in that regards going out wide? And I think if Kelsey and the offensive line can do that overall, and again, play in the trenches, although I don't expect this to be a trenches type sort of game, knowing the running backs and knowing more importantly the passing personnel for both sides, I think Jason Kelsey and the Eagles offensive line will do a good job. All right. So as I've said before, I said it at the top of the show, if you're following me on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, you've probably seen my videos called Experiencing the Super Bowl. And again, I've been going to a lot of places. Sunday, I was at the NFL Experience at the Convention Center. Monday was opening night at Footprint Center. Had to get a little creative during the week. Tuesday, I was at Tuesday, I just took a walk around downtown Phoenix. There was no event going on. Wednesday, there was supposed to be an event here at Cronkite, but it ended up being canceled. It actually would have been with some of the crew members working for Fox Sports. So would have been a pretty cool experience overall, knowing guys who would be working the big game this Sunday. And then Thursday, you got the NFL honors. I'd have to say, simply put, this is the first time that I've ever been in a city during the Super Bowl. Simply put, it's been amazing. You're so close to the players. You're so close to the media as well. I mean, especially during this midweek, I've seen some guys walking around with media tags, and I'm thinking to myself, and shame on me for doing this, thinking this, but I said, I should know more media guys. I really should know more media guys. And I'm like, who in the world is this guy passing me by? And I don't know. Again, shame on me for not knowing. But just knowing that you've got the media personnel, I mean, this is the Super Bowl. This is the biggest American sporting event. Everybody and their brother will be here. And if they're not, they're going to be tuning into their televisions on Sunday. And you are right in the center of that action. I would do it again, honestly. I mean, you think about it. Next year's Super Bowl is in Las Vegas. It's only about a 4 or 5 hour drive from here in Phoenix. I wouldn't mind going. It's a type of electric atmosphere you don't feel anywhere else. I've gone to some of these events and it almost feels like I don't live in Phoenix. It feels like I'm on vacation when I'm doing this. And again, shame on me for not thinking Phoenix does that much. Again, if you don't live in Phoenix, you probably don't realize how barren, I might say, the streets really are. I mean, there's not much going on in downtown Phoenix unless like the Suns or the Diamondbacks are playing, to be honest with you. Much not necessarily the case in Ohio, at least like Cincinnati, where I grew up, and it's probably the case in Columbus and Cleveland. But again, Phoenix has just lit up, and it's been an entire party during this time. I got to say, I've got some good picks. I got to see the Lombardi Trophy as well. Cross my fingers, the Bengals will win that one day for sure. Hopefully under the reign of Joey B and crew. And when you look at some other options, I saw opening night. I should note this as well, is that I didn't grow up going to NFL games. I didn't go to a single NFL game when I was in Cincinnati. So just being around like NFL players, being in the same venue, that's something different for me to be out there, be in that certain situation. So for me, unto myself, that is a dream come true. But even to get to that experience of seeing the Lombardi, seeing the rings, although the Bengals don't have any, nor do the Browns, just to be around this culture of NFL football is just simply amazing. I want to note a couple of just different experiences I've had. Of course, you'll see experiencing the Super Bowl. Today's episode, I went out to Old Town in Scottsdale. That's where ESPN is set up. I was able to watch Get Up and First Take Live earlier today. You will see that on TikTok. You'll also see some updates on Twitter and on Instagram. But I got some good pics. I got some good pics of the crew members. Saw Pat McAfee walk by me yesterday. And again, if you saw my Instagram post yesterday, or if you watched the TikTok, you're probably wondering why in the world Pat McAfee was walking past me. I also have no clue either. Why I did not get a picture with him is beyond me. Again, that's an L on my part, but nonetheless, we move on. I'll tell you what happened. I was walking out and I was going to make some rounds, see what's going on, because I knew the red carpet was happening sometime in the afternoon and evening. I had a class, got done around 2:45, and it was pretty close to the convention center here in Phoenix. So I decided to walk around maybe 2 minutes after I exit the classroom. Pat McAfee and his entourage is walking by. Now, a lot of the celebs, and Pat was the same way, he did not have his face on, or he didn't have glasses. He had sunglasses on, just of course to avoid paparazzi. But of course, it's Pat McAfee. You see the spiked hair, you see the flannel, and you know who he is. And I saw him, and I was like, oh shoot, it's Pat McAfee. And I don't know what went through my head, because the thing is, I've been in those situations where I've seen celebs and I've gone to talk to them and say, hey, you've done a nice job. And then I've been on the other side, this being one of them, where I just haven't talked to them. Maybe it was a good thing I didn't talk to them. There was one time, actually, I saw Jordan Cornette, who works for ACC Network. He was at St. X versus Moeller basketball game. By the way, shout out to St. X's basketball team. They've got senior night tonight. But back to my point, I was going to go talk to him, and I was like, excuse me, sir. I don't know if you've heard this, but you look a lot like Jordan Cornette. Guess who he was? Jordan Cornette. So that would have been in a very embarrassing situation. But back to my point about Pat McAfee, I kind of just nodded at him, like how the guys do it, like sup, man. Basically, sup Pat McAfee. So that's how it ended up working. And then I realized, oh yeah, that was Pat McAfee. Let me get out my phone and take this video. So that's how that sequence ended up happening. That's probably one of the highlights. I think another one was being at Old Town Scottsdale today. I actually was lucky enough that there were a few potted plants and trash cans that were around, and much like many of the other fans, I decided to stand on one of the gardening pots. Again, I'm about 180 pounds, so this gardening pot was not like the small pots you see in your backyard. It was a big pot, but nonetheless, I was able to stand on it, take some videos. It was pretty good videos as well. Again, check it out. You saw the crew members. It was a pretty good view, and you saw me on ESPN. You'll see it probably on Twitter, and you'll probably see it again. But if you want to check it out, go to First Take Twitter and look at the one where the crew makes their predictions for the Super Bowl. And when you go down, I think when Stephen A is making his prediction, you'll see someone holding up a Burrow jersey on the left. That's me holding up this sucker right here, the Joe Burrow jersey that I'm currently wearing. So that's that. And again, headed to Hance Park tomorrow, which is kind of up the road from here where I'm doing this, the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication. Looking at the Super Bowl itself, I'll take this from an Ohio perspective. Again, when you look at the fans, the least annoying amount of fans, the Chiefs fans. Eagles fans have been nothing but rambunctious this week in good ways and bad. But when you look at the Super Bowl in general, and you look at the legacy for the quarterbacks specifically, you've got Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, and Joe Burrow in the AFC. I think if Mahomes gets a second Lombardi, he himself kind of separates himself in ways from the other two quarterbacks just from getting that second trophy, kind of proving to himself that he is number one. If you tuned in a couple weeks ago, I talked to Bengals Radio Network's Wayne Box Miller on the fact of, do the Bengals take that kind of supremacy leadership role in the AFC should they win the game? And again, this is how crucial these games are to legacy. Is you're looking at this Kansas City Chiefs team once again back in the Super Bowl, and again, Patrick Mahomes with 2 Lombardis, already getting some comparisons to Tom Brady if he can reach Tom Brady's stature once Mahomes' career is all said and done. I look at the Eagles side again, and again, there was this one theorist, I might call him or her, that basically predicted the Super Bowl for the next 10 years. This was back in 2015, I believe. 2023, the person said the Eagles. Knowing also that Patrick Mahomes got the MVP last night, looking more like the Eagles. Not necessarily that being said, but also that being said, fly Eagles fly. And I think the Eagles take the Lombardi this year. Again, the Kansas City Chiefs doing a great job overall, but I'm not going to sing the entire song, although I heard it a lot today in Scottsdale, but I'll just say it there. And again, the Bengals fans can say it with me again for this one game. EAGLES, Eagles. Beat the Chiefs, all right? Can you do the Bills and Bengals a favor this weekend? And let's keep the AFC race between those 3 quarterbacks kind of nice and even. Got it? Thank you. So that will wrap up my coverage today of Buckeye Sports Breakdown. Again, a little laid back today, talked about the records, some legacies, and of course the Super Bowl happening on Sunday. As I said, Eagles pulling off the W. I think they pull it off 34-30. That's going to be my final score. So once again, I'm Mihir Sinhasan. Thanks for tuning in to Buckeye Sports Breakdown, and we will see you next week.